What does it take to buy a house in Spain? All I remember is Lindy, although I go by the name of Irish, which is my pen name, and I am living in Spain. So welcome to my channel. Um, I wanted to talk about the process of buying a house in Spain because I think a lot of people have this vision, or I've seen it a lot, like on TikToks and stuff like that. That living in Spain or buying a house is cheap and you can buy this house, but you have to be very, very careful where you buy a house, who you buy from, and how you buy the house because there's a lot of bureaucracy in Spain. There's a lot of things that you might not know or understand, and it's really important to decide whether you're going to go be a cash buyer or you're going to go with a mortgage. We went with a mortgage first and foremost because of the house. We weren't going to be able to afford it outright cash, not just because the fact that you have to add, not only is it the house that you're paying for, you've got to put your taxes in, solicitors fees, estate fees, registration fees. There's so many fees that also are added to the house itself, so that's going to cost you a lot of money. So when you calculated it and all that, we thought it's going to be a lot. And the other second reason why we went for a mortgage as well is because the bank will not um, give you a loan without thoroughly checking that the house is legitimate. And I think that was one of the most positive things that we ever did because it caused two buyers to pull out from us because they realized that we are going with a mortgage and they preferred cash buyers. So just be careful if you are a cash buyer. You might be found in a situation that won't work in your favor. And what do I mean by that? Basically, the first house we put an offer on, we loved it. Big, nice, and nice as much as this one. However, they had built an extension on the house. They'd been there 7 years and they built an extension, and that extension was illegal. It was on the cadastral reference, so you've got a cadastral reference which shows the area view of the house. So, because they keep an eye on that. But then on the registration, a land registry, that part of the building was not there, and that is a problem. So the bank would obviously question that bit. How is it valued, and how much is that? And how does it work and tie into the house? On top of that, the place was in El Campo, so a countryside, and countryside areas you have to have more land than you do buildings, and it can become a problem because it's rustic land. Building on rustic land is not pretty much, they don't like it, and that building had no registration licenses, no habitation licenses, and it was going to be a big problem for us. We were going to either ask to tear it down, or we were going to be slammed with a big fine, or but they hadn't had that yet, and I think they were worried that it would trigger it, I guess. I believe back then, we were doing this 2024, I was under the understanding that after 12 years they cannot pursue you for money so they were there 7 years. Whether they've now extended that and they can't do that, and they can still come and say take that building down, or we're going to fine you for this. It can happen. There's a lot of things that can happen that you are not aware of. I only started to learn these things as we went through the process. So when we put an offer on that house and they found out that, and they said, yes, we'll accept, but then a day later they said they'd spoken to their son and they needed time to think about it because they heard that we were doing a part mortgage. They were hesitant, and then they came back and said they had a cash buyer, so we kind of dropped it. But excuse me, a year later the house is still on the market. So yeah, they want someone who's going to just cash and get solicitor who won't be as upfront, or a estate agent who won't be as upfront, because they are there, and because they're all going to benefit from the sale. So you just be very, very careful. The second house we almost went for. I actually loved that house, and it had everything that we wanted, and they'd done the house up as well. Unfortunately, once again, it had an illegal building. They had built a whole casita. The casita was absolutely lovely, but it was not registered on the land registry. It was on the cadastral reference. When we asked, have you been paying tax? They said, yes, we're paying tax. And I think what they meant is, because there's area views, they take area views of houses, so they know what buildings are there. And sometimes they don't say anything. It's like they're waiting for you. I don't know. It's like they're waiting for the moment to get you, either when you're selling, because they'd been there, I think more than 8-9 years, and they've had no problem with that casita being up. Nothing. They said they're paying taxes. I think they're saying they were paying their council tax, the EB, that's what it's called here, was increased. So they thought that they were paying tax on that and that it had been accepted. But again, the bank would say, well, that's not, and they would probably reduce the loan or refuse to mortgage it altogether because of risk. We had put an offer on the house. They said yes. The offer, including the furniture, they would leave because their furniture was great. It was nice. They were a British couple, lovely people. Not suited going out to dodge anybody. However, paperwork wasn't. I know even the fencing and the areas, perimeters around the house weren't exactly matching each other, which was really important. So they were trying to hurry us up as well. And there's another thing: don't put a deposit down on a house you're not sure about, because you will not get that money back. They'll say something like put a reserve on it, like 5K or 3K or whatever, and if you pull out, you don't see that money. That is how it works in Spain. So be careful before you put any money down. If they pull out, yes, you can get your money back if you've got a great solicitor, because this is what we found out. So as we were trying to get that house ready, the solicitor that we had been recommended us was an absolute horrible person. Not only was he not responding to emails, he was just not doing his job. So he wasn't even doing, so he couldn't be trusted. And they started to try and rush us to pay, and they were saying that they've got cash buyers and we need to do this otherwise. And I got to the point, I said, look, if this house is meant to be, it will be. If not, then the cash buyers can take that house and take it out of our hands because it's not meant to be. And we will still persist, saying that that other bit needs to be registered. I don't know how much that's going to trigger, because it can trigger expenses, or they'll say you need to pay for that house, and or take it down and stuff like that. And they didn't want to address that. So in the end, he said that he's going to give it to somebody else, but those people pulled out. It sounded like it was some sort of fraud. I don't know, but by then we had already moved on, and we found this house. And this house belonged to a Spanish family. And once again, this house had one. So the original house was what is now the garage, but it has a casita, and then it has the main house that's behind me, and it has another little shed that's behind me, and all those were not registered as well. The difference is that this had been in the family for over 60 years, and the buildings had been here for many years, so they could not be pursued for um, unregistered buildings. However, the reason why it took so long for us to move is because on the cadastral reference, all these buildings were showing up, on the town hall, but on the land registry, there was absolutely only just that little garage building that's over in the corner. That's a little, and they had to update that. Not only does the bank want it, we needed it. So we had to hire an assessor, and we had to get an artist. So the plans of the house had to be redone and redrawn, and so that took a process on its own. Don't buy a house in July and August. Nothing gets done. The town hall or the land registry, they just did not do anything until October to update the plans of the house. And once the plans of our house were done, they weren't liable for a lot of things, like because it had been in the family for a long time. However, the house does have more buildings than land, which they prefer not to have. However, because it's been in the family and it has been all done properly, and luckily we had a better solicitor this time who was on top of everything and answered questions, and including the bank person who was dealing with our mortgage was also on top of everything. So everything was done according to how it should be. So the plans are exactly how it should be. We know who is responsible for our water. We know who is responsible for the electric. We know how much land we have. We know that all the land is now, shown, and all the buildings are on the property. Because if we're ever to sell, that's what we need to present, and we won't be liable for anything because that has all been sorted out. And I think it's just some of those things that you need to be aware of when buying a house in Spain. The house may be cheap, but the end result might be it costs you more and more. Like, you could find out that some of the houses we found had no habitation license. You'd be slapped with a problem. So it gets triggered more likely when it gets sold, because you've got things have to change hands, and you're gonna have to go and register your padron, and those all get triggered, and they start questioning. It's like the taxman, they start followed. You get a tax bill that was like for 6 years ago, and you're like, what's this? And that's how it is here in Spain. It might not happen over the years, but so, and I think a lot of people would prefer cash buys, so it's off their hands. So but yeah, just be very careful when you're buying a house in Spain. Not all bad, it can be good. And I think for us, eventually we found the house, because I remember driving into the area and thinking, I like this place. I just had a calm about it. The other ones I loved, but this one I absolutely loved. And when we finally moved here and met our neighbors, that made me realize why this house was meant to be the house, that because our neighbors have been the most helpful people I have ever met. We're going over for lunch on a Saturday tomorrow to see them, and they've been to ours. We've been back and forth. Our kids play together, and it's been amazing, and it's been really, really helpful. Even the school my son goes to is amazing. So I'm so glad that we ended up where we ended up. Sometimes, when that door shuts, it's not meant to be, and wait for the one that's meant for you. And yeah, it's been great, and I absolutely love being here. I love it. There's been some challenges, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I absolutely love being here. And yeah, so when you're buying a house, just be careful about it in Spain, because anything could happen. Anything, and you'll be surprise bills. So anyway, guys, I will leave you with this, and I will talk about more stuff that has happened to us in Spain. Anyway, guys, hasta luego.